Jack Miller was just a simple wheat farmer in rural Montana, living quietly on his small farm, keeping to himself and working the land his grandfather left him. That all changed the day he found a beautiful woman crying at the farmer's market, still wearing her wedding dress. She had been abandoned there, with nowhere to go and no one to turn to. Jack did what his heart told him was right. He offered her shelter at his farm. What he didn't know was that her ex-fiancé was the notorious Shadow King, the most dangerous crime boss in the Pacific Northwest. As Jack and the mysterious bride grow closer, her dark past threatens to destroy their budding romance. Can this humble farmer find the strength to stand against a ruthless criminal empire to protect the woman he's falling in love with? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Dawn broke over the Bitterroot Valley with the crisp clarity of early autumn. Jack Miller stood in the bed of his weathered Ford pickup, arranging crates of fresh produce for the Saturday farmers market. His calloused hands moved with practiced efficiency, checking each tomato and ear of corn as he'd done every weekend for the past decade. The leather-bound ledger beside him lay open, its pages filled with his neat handwriting. Prices, quantities, profits, and losses all carefully recorded in blue ink. His father had always said a farmer's ledger told the true story of his life, and Jack had maintained his with religious devotion since inheriting the farm. Market Square came alive as vendors set up their stalls. Jack exchanged quiet nods with familiar faces: Mary Chen with her fresh-baked bread, old Tom Peterson and his honey jars, the Henderson sisters with their handmade quilts. The morning routine felt as natural as breathing until the first whispers reached his ears. Poor thing. Who leaves a bride at the market? Doesn't look local. Jack glanced up from his produce arrangement. Through gaps between the market stalls, he caught glimpses of white, a wedding dress, its hem stained with mud, its wearer huddled on a bench near the square's central fountain. Something about her posture spoke of complete defeat. He tried to focus on his work. Mrs. Davis was examining his tomatoes with her usual thoroughness, asking about his organic growing methods. But his eyes kept drifting to that splash of white, to the dark hair falling forward to hide the bride's face. Somebody should do something, Mrs. Davis muttered, selecting 3 perfectly ripe tomatoes. Can't just leave her there like that. Jack made change from his cash box, written details in his ledger. Maybe she's waiting for someone, he offered, though the words felt hollow even as he spoke them. The morning wore on. The bride didn't move. Occasional passers-by would pause, some offering awkward words of comfort or assistance, but she shook her head each time. Jack sold corn, potatoes, late summer squash, making his usual steady progress through his inventory. But with each transaction, each ledger entry, his awareness of her presence grew. When the lunch crowd thinned, he found himself walking toward the fountain, a fresh apple in hand. Up close, he could see her dress was expensive, the kind of thing you'd see in magazines, all delicate lace and tiny pearls. Her hands, clasped tightly in her lap, bore no rings. "Thought you might be hungry," he said quietly, holding out the apple. She looked up slowly. Her face was tear-stained, but beautiful, with high cheekbones and clear green eyes that held a depth of sadness he couldn't fathom. She stared at the offered fruit as if she'd forgotten what food was. "I'm Jack," he continued when she didn't speak. "Jack Miller. I have a farm just outside town." "Sarah," she whispered, her voice rough from crying. I was supposed to be married today." Jack settled carefully on the bench, leaving space between them. "What happened, if you don't mind my asking?" She shook her head, dark hair falling forward again. "It's complicated and probably dangerous to talk about." That should have been his warning to walk away. He had a farm to run, a quiet life to maintain. But something in her voice, in the careful way she held herself despite her obvious distress, touched something in him. "Do you have somewhere to go?" he asked. "Family? Friends?" "No," The word fell like a stone. No one who won't, who can't. She trailed off, shoulders trembling. Jack thought of his farmhouse, too big for one person since his parents passed, thought of the spare room that hadn't seen a guest in years, thought of his mother's voice. Sometimes the right thing and the smart thing aren't the same thing, Jackie. I have a spare room, he heard himself say. If you need a place to stay while you figure things out, no pressure, no obligations, just a safe place to rest. Sarah's eyes snapped to his face, searching for something. Ulterior motives, perhaps, or signs of deception. Whatever she saw made her shoulders relax slightly. Why would you help a stranger? She asked. Jack shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. Because it's what decent people do, he said simply, and because nobody should be alone on what was supposed to be their wedding day. She looked down at the apple still in his hand, then around at the market. A sleek black car drove slowly past the square, and Jack noticed her tense momentarily before it disappeared around a corner. "Okay," she said finally, her voice barely audible. "Thank you." As Jack helped her into his truck 20 minutes later, having packed up his remaining produce early for the first time in 10 years, he couldn't shake the feeling that his orderly life was about to become very complicated. His ledger lay closed on the seat between them, its neat columns of figures suddenly seeming less important than the woman beside him, clutching her muddied wedding dress close as she stared straight ahead toward an uncertain future. The truck's tires crunched over gravel as Jack turned onto the long driveway leading to his farm. Through the windshield, the late afternoon sun caught the weathered wood of the two-story farmhouse, its white paint peeling slightly around the edges, fields of wheat stretched out on either side, golden in the autumn light. "It's not much," Jack said, suddenly aware of how humble it must look to someone like Sarah, who even in a muddy wedding dress carried herself with an unmistakable air of refinement. "But it's home." Sarah's hands relaxed slightly in her lap. "It's beautiful," she said softly, and something in her voice made him think she meant it. In his home office, behind a frame on the wall, lay the original deed to the Miller family farm, dated 1932. Jack's grandfather had worked 3 jobs to buy this land, had poured his life into making it prosper. The deed was a reminder of where he came from, of the honest work that had built this place. "The spare room's upstairs," Jack said as he led her inside. The screen door creaked familiarly behind them. "Bathrooms down the hall, kitchens through here." He gestured as they walked, acutely aware of how the old floorboards squeaked under their feet. Sarah took everything in with careful glances, her green eyes missing nothing. The worn but clean furniture, the family photos on the walls, the shelf of farming reference books beside his father's old recliner. Her wedding dress whispered against the hardwood floors as she followed him. "You live here alone?" she asked, pausing to study a photo of Jack with his parents, taken the year before the accident that claimed them both. "Since Mom and Dad passed, 5 years ago." He cleared his throat. "Car accident on Route 43. "I'm sorry," Sarah said, and the genuine empathy in her voice made him look at her sharply. She was staring at the photo with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Here's your room," he said, pushing open a door upstairs. The afternoon light streamed through lace curtains his mother had hung years ago. The double bed was neatly made, though the quilt was a bit faded. "I'll grab you some towels. And maybe some clothes? I have some old t-shirts that might work until we can figure something out." Sarah stood in the center of the room, her wedding dress incongruous against the simple furnishings. "Thank you," she said, "for all of this. I know you must have questions." "Everyone's entitled to their privacy," Jack said, though his curiosity was burning. "When you're ready to talk, I'll listen. Until then, you're safe here." Something flickered in her eyes at the word safe, but she just nodded. "I'll get those towels," he said. "Make yourself at home." Downstairs, Jack leaned against the kitchen counter, trying to process the surreal turn his day had taken. Through the window, he could see his wheat fields waiting to be harvested, the reliable rhythm of farm life continuing despite everything. The deed behind the frame in his office held more than just legal ownership. It represented generations of millers living quiet, honest lives on this land. Now, he'd brought something complicated into that simple existence. The mysterious black car at the market, Sarah's careful way of watching her surroundings, the tension in her shoulders, everything suggested she was running from something or someone. The sound of water running upstairs told him Sarah had found the bathroom. He busied himself gathering towels, some old clothes that might fit her, trying not to think about the wedding dress pooled on his spare room floor. When he returned upstairs, he heard quiet crying through the bathroom door. He set the towels and clothes outside it, then walked back downstairs, his footsteps deliberately heavy to let her know she wasn't being watched. In the kitchen, he started, pulling out ingredients for dinner, letting the familiar motions of cooking ground him. The sun was setting over his wheat fields, painting everything in soft gold light. From upstairs came the sound of the bathroom door opening, then quiet footsteps. Whatever Sarah was running from, whatever complications she brought with her, he knew he'd made the right choice. His parents had raised him to help people in need, no questions asked. The deed on his wall reminded him daily of the values this farm was built on. He just hoped those values would be enough for whatever lay ahead. Morning came early on the farm. Sarah emerged from her room, wearing Jack's old flannel shirt and jeans, both too big but cinched with a belt she'd found in a drawer. She found him at the kitchen table, studying weather reports over coffee. "There's more coffee in the pot," he said, not looking up. "Milk's in the fridge if you want it." She poured herself a cup, movements precise despite the oversized clothes. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her face clean of makeup. Something about her still spoke of expensive tastes, even in borrowed farm clothes. "I'd like to help," she said, sitting across from him. "With the farm work, it seems only fair." Now he did look up, studying her manicured hands. "Farm work's not easy. I'm stronger than I look." A shadow of something, pride maybe or defiance, crossed her face. "And I'm a quick learner." Jack nodded slowly. "All right, we'll start with feeding the chickens." The morning unfolded in a series of small lessons. Sarah learned to scatter feed without startling the hens, to check for eggs without getting pecked. She watched intently as Jack demonstrated how to work the irrigation system, asked intelligent questions about crop rotation and soil management. But twice during the morning, she disappeared into the house. Each time, Jack glimpsed her through windows, phone pressed to her ear, speaking in hushed tones. Her face during these calls was tight with anxiety. When she rejoined him, she acted as if nothing had happened. Jack didn't press, but he noticed how she kept the phone close, hidden but always within reach. At lunch, she surprised him by making sandwiches, arranging them on plates with a care that suggested experience with finer dining. They ate on the porch, watching hawks circle over the wheat fields. "The neighbors will talk," she said suddenly, "about me being here. Probably already are." Jack took another bite of his sandwich. "Small town. Does that bother you?" He shrugged. "Truth's usually less interesting than gossip. They'll move on to something else eventually." Sarah's phone buzzed in her pocket. She tensed, but didn't. "Check it." "Jack," she said quietly, "if anyone asks about me, I'll tell them you're a friend staying for a while." He met her eyes. "Nothing else is their business." Relief flickered across her face, followed quickly by guilt. She opened her mouth as if to say more, then closed it as a truck drove past the farm, slowing slightly before continuing on. That evening, after Sarah had gone up to her room, Jack heard her voice through the walls. The words were indistinct, but her tone was pleading, frightened. When he passed her door later with fresh towels, he heard quiet crying. The phone represented something, a link to whatever she was running from, a chain to her past that she couldn't quite break. Jack thought of asking about it, but remembered his mother's words about respecting others' privacy. Still, he made sure the farm's gates were locked that night and checked twice that the porch lights were working. In the dark hours before dawn, he woke to the sound of footsteps on the porch. Looking out his window, he saw Sarah pacing, phone to her ear. The screen's glow illuminated tears on her cheeks. "I won't," she was saying, voice carrying faintly through the glass. "You can't make me. No, please, I'll figure something out." Jack stood in the shadows of his room, watching her distress, wanting to help, but knowing this wasn't the moment. Whatever storm was coming, it would arrive in its own time. For now, all he could offer was sanctuary. When she finally came back inside, he heard her lock her door. The sound felt like both a rejection of her past and a barrier to her future. A symbol of a woman caught between worlds, trying to find safety in a place built on generations of trust and honest living. The old recipe book sat open on the kitchen counter, its pages yellowed and splattered with decades of cooking. Jack's mother had kept every family recipe here, her handwriting flowing across the pages in faded ink. Sarah ran her fingers over. A recipe for apple pie, tracing the notes in the margins. "Your mother wrote these?" she asked, studying the detailed instructions. "3 generations of Miller women," Jack said, setting a basket of fresh apples on the counter. "My grandmother started it, then my mother added her recipes. She always said cooking was like farming. You put love into it, you get love back." Sarah smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. "My grandmother taught me to cook too, though her specialties were a bit different." She hesitated, then added, "She had a restaurant in Shanghai before coming to America." Jack noted this small offering of personal history, the first she'd shared. What did she cook? Everything. Sarah's eyes grew distant with memory, but her xiaolongbao, soup, dumplings, were famous in her neighborhood. "She tried teaching me, but I never got the dough quite right." She fell silent, realizing perhaps that she'd said too much, but Jack just nodded toward the apples. "Well, how about we start with something simpler? Mom's apple pie recipe hasn't failed me yet." They worked together in comfortable quiet, Sarah peeling apples with unexpected skill, Jack mixing the dough by memory. The kitchen filled with the scent of cinnamon and butter. "I used to do this with my parents every fall," Jack said, rolling out the crust. "Mom would can applesauce too, enough to last all winter." "What happened to them?" Sarah asked softly. "If you don't mind telling me." Jack kept his eyes on the dough. Icy road, failed brake line. They were heading home from a farm equipment auction. He breathed deeply. "I was in the fields when the sheriff came to tell me." Sarah's hand touched his arm briefly. "I'm sorry." The words were simple, but sincere. "Been 5 years now." He began crimping the pie's edges. "Some days it feels like yesterday, others like a lifetime ago." A car drove past the farm, engine growling. Sarah tensed, but kept arranging apple slices in the pie shell. "Your parents," Jack said carefully. "Are they gone?" Her voice was flat. "Car accident too when I was 12. My grandmother raised me after. She arranged another apple slice with precise care. She died 2 years ago." Jack heard what she wasn't saying. She had no family left to turn to, no one to help her with whatever trouble she was running from. The pie went into the oven, and they sat at the kitchen table with coffee, the recipe book open between them. Sarah flipped through the pages, pausing at a chocolate cake recipe. "This was for your 10th birthday," she said, reading the margin note. "With extra frosting because you were sick with flu. Mom believed cake could cure anything." Jack smiled at the memory. She wasn't entirely wrong. Sarah's phone buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it, but her shoulders tensed. "You know," Jack said, pretending not to notice, "I've got all these vegetables from the garden. Maybe you could teach me something your grandmother made." The phone buzzed again. Sarah's hand twitched toward it, then deliberately reached for the recipe book. Instead, "There is a simple stir-fry she used to make," she said, "with whatever vegetables were fresh. She said good cooking was about working with what life gives you." The afternoon light slanted through the kitchen windows as they cooked again. Sarah, demonstrating the proper way to cut vegetables, how to make a simple sauce. She moved with growing confidence, as if the familiar motions of cooking grounded her. When Jack's ancient kitchen timer dinged, the pie emerged golden brown and perfect. They ate it warm on the porch, watching the sunset paint the wheat fields gold. "Thank you," Sarah said suddenly. For what? You did half the work. For not asking questions. For just, she gestured at the farm, the pie, the peaceful evening. For this. Her phone buzzed again. This time Sarah pulled it out, looked at the screen and abruptly stood. I need to... She hurried inside, leaving her half-eaten pie. Jack watched her go, then looked down at the recipe book she'd left open. On one page, his mother had written, Food made with love feeds more than the body. It feeds the soul, heals the heart, builds bridges between people. He hoped, for Sarah's sake, that his mother had been right about that too. The newspaper lay folded on Jack's kitchen table, its headlines stark in the morning light. Pacific Northwest Crime Ring expands operations. Below, smaller text read, Shadow King's organization linked to string of suspicious business acquisitions. Sarah's hands shook as she pushed the paper away, her coffee untouched. You shouldn't read that garbage, Jack said, coming in from his morning chores. Local paper'll print any rumor they... He stopped, seeing her face. Sarah, she was pale, her eyes fixed on something distant. They're getting closer. Before Jack could respond, gravel crunched in the driveway. A black SUV with tinted windows pulled up to the house. Two men in expensive suits stepped out, their movements smooth and practiced. Inside, Sarah whispered urgently. Please, Jack, let me handle this. But Jack stayed on the porch, arms crossed. The men approached, their shoes incongruous against the dusty farmyard. Mr. Miller? The taller one smiled without warmth. I'm Michael Chen. This is my associate, Mr. Ross. We're looking for Sarah Maxwell. Jack's face remained neutral. Don't know any Sarah Maxwell. No. Chen's smile didn't waver. Pretty girl, dark hair, recently left her fiancé at the altar. We're concerned about her welfare. Haven't seen her. Jack's voice was steady. Not much traffic out here except locals. Ross stepped closer, his suit jacket shifting to reveal a shoulder holster. Mr. Miller, we know she's here. Let's not make this difficult. The screen door creaked. Sarah stepped out, her borrowed flannel shirt suddenly seeming like inadequate. Armor. It's okay, Jack, she said quietly. I'll talk to them. Chen's smile widened. Sarah, the boss is worried about you. Tell Marcus I'm not coming back. Her voice shook slightly but held firm. It's over. You know it doesn't work that way. Chen glanced at the farmhouse, the wheat fields beyond. Nice place. Quiet. Be a shame if something happened to it. Jack stepped forward, but Sarah's hand on his arm stopped him. 2 days, Chen continued, to reconsider. The boss is being generous. He reached into his jacket, making Jack tense, but pulled out only a business card. When you're ready to be reasonable, call this number. He set the card on the porch rail. As the men turned to leave, Ross paused. Pretty far from the city, he said, looking around. Lots of accidents can happen on farms. Equipment malfunctions. Fires. His eyes met Jack's. Things break. They drove away in a cloud of dust. Sarah sagged against the porch rail, the business card trembling in her hands. I have to leave, she said. I can't let them hurt you or the farm. Sarah. Jack's voice was gentle but firm. What's going on? She stared at the disappearing SUV. Marcus Joe, the Shadow King. I was supposed to marry him next spring. A business arrangement, really. My grandmother's old properties in exchange for his protection. When she died, he said he owned me too. But you ran. At the rehearsal, I just couldn't. She crumpled the business card. He doesn't let things go, Jack. People who cross him disappear. Jack picked up the newspaper, studying the photo of recently acquired businesses, all family-owned, all sold under mysterious circumstances. We should call the police, he said. Sarah laughed. Bitterly. He owns half the force in Seattle. The other half is too scared to move against him. She turned to him, eyes desperate. I'll pack my things. The longer I stay, the more danger you're in. And go where? Jack stepped closer. How long before they find you again? I don't know. Her voice broke. But I won't let what happened to my grandmother's restaurant happen here. The accidents, the threats, until she signed everything away. Jack thought of his family's farm, of generations of honest work. of Sarah's face when she cooked, when she helped with chores, when she thought no one was watching. 2 days, he said finally. What? They gave us 2 days. Let's use them. Figure something out. Jack, you don't understand what he's capable of. No, he agreed. But I understand what I'm capable of. This is my home, Sarah. I won't be scared off it. She stared at him, tears welling. I can't ask you to risk everything for me. You're not asking. He picked up the newspaper, tore it in half. I'm choosing. The business card lay forgotten on the porch rail as they went inside, where coffee and the remains of their shared breakfast waited. But the peace of their morning was broken, replaced by the heavy knowledge that somewhere a clock was now counting down. Evening light painted the wheat fields gold as Jack walked the farm's perimeter, checking fences more from habit than necessity. Sarah worked in the small vegetable garden, her movements becoming more natural with each passing day. Near her feet lay a bunch of wildflowers she'd gathered, black-eyed Susans and prairie coneflowers, their bright colors a defiant splash of beauty against the growing tension. Henderson's having their barn dance tonight, Jack said, approaching the garden. Whole town'll be there. Sarah looked up, brushing dirt from her hands. You should go. Maintain normalcy. We should go, he corrected. Show them there's nothing to gossip about. She fingered a wildflower stem. Jack, after those men came, exactly why we should go. Hide in plain sight. He gestured at the flowers. Those are pretty. They remind me of when I was little, before everything got complicated. She gathered the bouquet, wrapped a piece of twine around the stems. My grandmother's restaurant had a tiny garden. Every morning, she'd put fresh flowers on each table. Jack watched her arrange the flowers with the same care she brought to cooking, to farm work, to everything she did, despite the danger hanging over them. She hadn't lost her grace. The Henderson barn glowed with string lights, music and laughter spilling into the twilight. Sarah hesitated at the entrance, but Jack's hand on her back guided her forward. Inside, the local band played country songs while couples twirled across the floor. Jack Miller, Mary Chen called from her usual spot serving punch. And this must be your house guest we've all heard about. Sarah tensed but smiled politely. Sarah, thank you for having me. Word spread quickly through the barn. Curious eyes followed them, but the attention was more friendly than suspicious. These were people who'd known Jack his whole life, who trusted his judgment. Dance with me, he asked as the band started a slow song. Sarah glanced around nervously. I don't know the steps. Neither do I most days. He led her onto the floor. We'll figure it out together. Her hand felt small in his as they swayed to the music. She smelled like wildflowers and garden soil, and something inside Jack shifted, clicking into place like a key in a lock. Everyone's staring, she murmured. Let them. Better than them imagining things. A smile tugged at her lips. What things? Oh, you know, that you're a mysterious crime boss's runaway bride hiding out on my farm while his men threaten to burn it down. He kept his tone light, but felt her tense. Sorry, bad joke. No, it's... She looked up at him. How do you do that? Make even this feel normal? Nothing normal about this. His thumb traced circles on her hand. But maybe that's okay. The song ended, but they kept swaying slightly. Around them, other couples moved to the livelier tune that followed, but Jack and Sarah stayed in their own quiet moment. Until Sarah saw something over his shoulder and went rigid. Black SUV, she whispered, passing by outside. Jack turned them smoothly, catching a glimpse of the vehicle moving slowly past the barn. They're just trying to rattle us. It's working, but she didn't pull away. They danced 2 more songs before leaving, Jack's hand never leaving the small of her back. The drive home was quiet, both lost in thought. At the farmhouse, Sarah gathered her wildflower bouquet from where she'd left it in the truck. In the porch light, the flowers seemed to glow. Thank you, she said, for making me feel human again. Even just for a little while. Sarah... Jack stepped closer. She looked up at him, flowers cradled in her arms, and for a moment he thought her phone buzzed. The spell broke. I should... She gestured vaguely inside. Yeah. Jack stepped, Back, early morning tomorrow. He watched her disappear upstairs, the wildflowers still in her arms. Through her window, he saw her place them in a mason jar on the dresser, a small piece of beauty claimed from a complicated world. Later, lying awake, he heard her crying softly through the wall. The sound twisted something in his chest. 2 more black SUVs passed the farm that night, their engines growling in the darkness. But Jack found himself thinking not of threats or danger, but of Sarah's hand in his, of wildflowers and string lights, of moments stolen from a world intent on taking them away. The morning after the barn dance, Jack found Sarah in the kitchen, holding something that caught the sunlight like a shard of ice. An engagement ring, platinum and diamonds, worth more than his farm earned in a year. "I kept it," she said without looking up. "I don't know why. Insurance, maybe, or evidence." Jack leaned against the counter, waiting. "Marcus gave it to me at my grandmother's funeral." Her voice was distant. "Said it was time to formalize our arrangement." I didn't understand then what he meant. A truck engine rumbled outside. Sarah flinched, but continued. "The restaurant was struggling. Had been since before grandmother got sick. Marcus kept offering help, loans, partnerships. She always refused." Sarah's fingers tightened around the ring. Then the accident started. Health code violations, kitchen fires, break-ins, until she signed everything over to him. Sarah nodded. "She died 2 weeks later. Heart attack, they said, but I saw the medicine bottles in her trash. Pills I didn't recognize." The truck outside killed its engine. Heavy footsteps approached the porch. "I should have run then," Sarah whispered. "But I was scared, alone. He said he'd take care of me like he'd promised grandmother." A sharp knock at the door made them both jump. Jack moved to answer it, but Sarah grabbed his arm. "Don't!" Too late. The door swung open. Chen and Ross stood there, but this time they weren't alone. A third man stepped forward, elegant in a tailored suit, handsome in a predatory way. His smile was practiced, perfect. "Sarah." His voice was soft, cultured. "We need to talk." "Marcus." She straightened, the ring cutting into her palm. Jack stepped between them. "Get out of my house." Marcus Joe, the Shadow King, regarded him with mild amusement. "Mr. Miller, I've heard about your hospitality. Very touching. But Sarah and I have unfinished business." "No?" Sarah's voice shook. "We don't. The properties are still in your name, dear. Your grandmother's last gift. Once we're married, you killed her." Sarah's words cut like knives. "The pills, the heart attack, it was you." Marcus's smile didn't waver. "Accusations without proof are tiresome and dangerous." He glanced around the kitchen. "Lovely farm, Mr. Miller. Very flammable." Jack's fists clenched. Chen and Ross shifted, hands moving toward their jackets. "I won't sign anything over to you," Sarah said. "Ever." "No?" Marcus pulled out his phone, tapped it. "Right now, my men are parked outside 3 farms belonging to people who danced with you last night. The Hendersons, the Chens, old Tom Peterson, sweet people. Be a shame if—" "Stop." Sarah's voice cracked. She held out the ring. "Take it, take everything, just leave them alone." "Sarah, don't," Jack started. "Better." Marcus took the ring. "The papers are in the car. One signature and all this unpleasantness ends." Sarah moved toward the door, but Jack caught her arm. "Wait." He faced Marcus. "You're lying about the other farms." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Am I? Town this size. Strange cars get noticed. Nobody's reported anything." A flicker of something, annoyance, crossed Marcus's perfect facade. "You're smarter than you look, farmer." He adjusted his cuffs. "But that can change." Chen, the taller man, pulled out his phone, started dialing. "One call," Marcus said. "That's all it takes. How many friends did you dance with last night, Sarah? How many lives are you willing to risk?" Sarah looked at Jack, tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I can't let anyone else die because of me." She pulled away from Jack, followed Marcus to the SUV. Through the window, Jack watched her take papers, a pen. Sarah, he ran outside. Your grandmother stood up to him. Even when she was dying, she fought. She paused, pen hovering. He's right, Marcus said smoothly. And look what happened to her. Sign, Sarah. End this. Sarah stared at the papers. Then slowly she ripped them in half. No! Marcus's smile vanished. That was unwise. You want a war? Sarah's voice was steel. Fine, let's have one. I'll tell everyone what you did. Every restaurant owner, every business you're threatening. They'll all know. They won't believe you. Maybe not, but they'll start asking questions, looking closer. How many secrets can your empire survive? Marcus studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded to his men. We'll be in touch. He turned to Jack. Enjoy your farm, Mr. Miller. While you can. The SUV roared away, leaving them in a cloud of dust. Sarah's legs gave out. Jack caught her. Before she hit the ground, I just made things worse, she breathed. Jack held her close. No, you just started fighting back. In his father's study, Jack pulled out an old wooden box from the top shelf. Inside lay a Remington 870 shotgun, well-oiled and maintained despite years of disuse. Sarah watched from the doorway as he checked the mechanism. Dad taught me to shoot when I was 12, he said, not looking up. Said a farmer needs to protect his livestock from predators. Human predators are different, Sarah said quietly. Maybe. He set the shotgun aside. But the principle's the same. You protect what's yours. Sheriff Dave Walker's truck pulled into the driveway, right on time. Jack had called him after Marcus left, knowing they'd need more than a shotgun. The sheriff was a big man, gone soft, around the middle, but his eyes were sharp as he took in the situation. He listened to their story without interruption, though his jaw tightened at certain parts. Joe's got connections, he said finally. State level, maybe higher. We know, Sarah replied, but he's not bulletproof. The sheriff pulled out a notepad. Those properties he took, your grandmother's and others, there's patterns there, paper trails. He's careful, Sarah said. Nobody's that careful. Money moves, people talk. He looked at Jack. Your father and I served together. Reserves. He was a good man. Jack nodded, understanding the unspoken message. The sheriff would help, quietly. Meanwhile, Walker continued, we document everything. Photographs of vehicles, license plates, record conversations if you can. Build a case. And when they come back? Jack asked. The sheriff patted his service weapon. I'll have patrols. In the area. Response time under 5 minutes. But what? Might want to reach out to other farmers. Ones who've dealt with pressure to sell. Create a network, Sarah tensed. I won't put more people at risk. They're already at risk. The sheriff stood. Joe's been buying up land all through the valley. You're just the first ones to fight back. After he left, Jack and Sarah walked. The farm's perimeter planning. The shotgun was a comfort against Jack's shoulder, though he prayed he'd never need it. We should set up cameras, Sarah said. I know someone who can get good ones off the books. Jack glanced at her. Another piece of her past revealed. Your grandmother, he said carefully. She kept records. Sarah nodded. Everything. Transactions, meetings, threats hidden in her recipe books. Smart woman. Yes, Sarah's voice caught. I found them after. Didn't understand what they meant until it was too late. They reached the back field. The wheat rippled in. The breeze, peaceful despite everything. What did the sheriff mean about other farmers? Sarah asked. Development's been creeping in. Big companies wanting to build. Some folks have sold. Others have had accidents. Equipment failures. Crop diseases. Bad luck, they said. Sarah stopped walking. It's all connected. The restaurants, the farms. He's building an empire. And you're the loose end. No, she faced him. I'm the witness. The one who knows. Where the bodies are buried. A car approached on the main road. They both tensed until it passed. We'll need help, Jack said. People we can trust. The Hendersons and the Chens. Tom Peterson. Others who've been pressured. Sarah touched his arm. I meant what I said. I won't let anyone else die because of me. Jack covered her hand with his. Nobody's dying, but nobody's facing this alone either. The sun was setting, painting the wheat gold. In the distance, another car approached, slowed, then continued on, watching, waiting. "They'll come at night," Sarah said, "when we're vulnerable." Jack checked the shotgun's action again. "Then, we'd better get ready." They walked back to the house as darkness fell. Jack installed extra locks, while Sarah made calls to her contact about cameras. The sheriff's patrol car passed by twice, lights off, a quiet promise of support. Later, checking windows before bed, Jack found Sarah in the kitchen, studying his father's shotgun. "I've never fired one," she said. "I'll teach you tomorrow." She nodded, then suddenly hugged him fiercely. "Thank you for everything." Jack held her close, breathing in the scent of her hair. Outside, the night pressed against the windows, full of hidden threats. But in here, in this moment, there was only Sarah's warmth, her trust, her growing strength. "Get some sleep," he said gently. "Tomorrow, we start fighting back." She pulled away reluctantly, headed upstairs. Jack watched her go, then checked the shotgun one final time before setting it by his bed. In the distance, a car's engine growled in the darkness. Waiting. The security cameras arrived in a plain brown box, delivered by a man who melted away without a word. Sarah handled them with familiar ease, showing Jack how to position them for maximum coverage. Neither mentioned how she knew so much about surveillance systems. "These connect to our phones," she explained, checking the feeds. "Motion alerts, night vision, encrypted connection." Jack watched her work. This woman who'd arrived in a wedding dress, now confidently installing security. Tech on his farm. She caught him staring and blushed. "What? Just thinking how different you are from that first day at the market." She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Different good or different bad. Different strong. The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken things. Then Sarah's phone buzzed. Another camera alert, just a deer this time, but they both tensed anyway. "The Hendersons called," Jack said, changing the subject. "They're hosting a meeting tonight. Other farmers who've been pressured to sell." "How many?" 6 families. All had accidents in the past year. Sarah checked the last camera's angle. "It's dangerous getting them involved. They're already involved, just didn't know it until now." Evening found them in the Hendersons' barn, transformed from its recent dance venue into a war room. Mary Chen brought coffee. Tom Peterson had maps showing property boundaries, marking which farms had sold under suspicious circumstances. 3 fires in 6 months, Bill Henderson said, pointing to his map. "Insurance called them accidents." "Equipment failures at the right place," someone added, "right before they sold." "And the Johnsons' entire crop failing overnight," Mary Chen said. "Some kind of poison, they thought." Sarah stood, hands shaking slightly. "I know how Joe works. The accidents, the pressure. It's what he did to my grandmother's restaurant. What he's doing all over the valley." "But why?" Tom Peterson asked. "Why farms?" "Control," Jack realized. "Food supply, water rights, transportation routes. He's not just buying property, he's building infrastructure." Sarah nodded. "And making it look legitimate. Small business sales, willing sellers." "Not anymore," Bill Henderson growled. "We stand together." Agreements rumbled through the barn. Plans were made, cameras shared, patrols organized, phone trees established. A community turning its generational knowledge of the land into a defense network. Later, driving home, Sarah was quiet. "Having second thoughts?" Jack asked. "Wondering if I've doomed them all." She stared out the window at the dark fields. "Marcus doesn't lose, ever. First time for everything." At the farm, they checked cameras before heading in. Jack made tea while Sarah paced the kitchen, nervous energy radiating from her. "Tell me about him," Jack said quietly. Sarah's pacing stopped. "What? Marcus, know your enemy, right?" She sank into a chair. "He's patient, calculated. Everything's a transaction to him. Even people." Her hands cupped the warm mug. "Especially people like you." "I was an investment, the perfect wife to make his business look legitimate. Pretty, educated, from a respectable family." She laughed bitterly. Until I wasn't perfect anymore. Jack reached across the table, took her hand. You're perfect exactly as you are. She looked up, eyes wide. The kitchen was quiet except for their breathing and the soft hum of the refrigerator. Jack, she whispered. He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Their lips met softly, tentatively, then with growing certainty. Her hand came up to cup his cheek and he could feel her trembling. A camera alert buzzed on both their phones. They broke apart, breathing hard. Another false alarm, just wind-moving branches, but the moment had shattered. We should get some sleep, Sarah said, not meeting his eyes. Early morning. Sarah, please. Now she did look at him, eyes bright with unshed tears. I can't lose anyone else I care about. She fled upstairs before he could respond. Jack sat in the quiet kitchen, listening to her footsteps above, thinking of all the ways a heart could break. On the counter, their phones showed the camera feeds, empty fields, dark buildings, the vast night pressing in. Somewhere out there, Marcus Joe was planning his next move. But for now, all Jack could think about was the taste of Sarah's lips and the fear in her eyes when she pulled away. The power went out just after midnight. Jack woke to total darkness and the buzz of his phone, all cameras offline. The old storm lantern waited where it always had, on the shelf by his bed. 3 generations of Millers had used it during outages. Tonight, its light would serve a different purpose. He lit it just as Sarah appeared in his doorway. They cut the lines, she said. Main road and backup. Phones. No signal, they're blocking it somehow. The lantern's flame cast shifting shadows as they moved downstairs. Jack got his father's shotgun while Sarah checked the windows. The night pressed against the glass, thick with menace. An engine growled in the distance. Then another, coming closer. At least 3 vehicles, Sarah whispered. They'll surround the house. Good thing we're not in it. Jack hefted the lantern. Barn's already prepped. They slipped out the back door into darkness broken only by stars. The lantern turned low, guided them between buildings. Sarah moved silently despite her city background, following Jack's lead. They reached the barn just as headlights swept the farmyard. The vehicles were black SUVs, running dark except for parking lights. Men emerged like shadows, 8, maybe 10. Check the house, a familiar voice ordered. Chen, find them. From their hiding spot in the barn's hayloft, Jack and Sarah watched through gaps in the wooden walls. The lantern was shuttered but ready. They'll burn it, Sarah breathed. The house, the barn, everything. Let them try. Jack squeezed her hand. Signals coming back in 3, 2... Floodlights blazed to life, blinding the intruders. The Hendersons had brought their farming equipment. Tractors and trucks arranged in a circle, high beams aimed inward. More vehicles roared in from other directions as neighboring farmers arrived, engines gunning. Sheriff Walker's voice boomed through a megaphone. This is private property. Drop your weapons. Chen's men scattered for cover, but they were exposed in the glare. Jack raised the storm lantern, their preset signal. Answering lights appeared in neighboring fields, more farmers, more witnesses, phones recording everything. Quite a community you have here, Chen's voice carried clearly. Be a shame if accidents started happening. Equipment failures, crop fires. Like the Wrights? Bill Henderson shouted. The Johnsons? We know what you did. Proof's a funny thing, Chen called back. Hard to come by out here. Not anymore. Sarah stood, face illuminated by the lantern. I have everything, every transaction, every threat. My grandmother kept records of all of it. A new vehicle approached, expensive, sleek. Marcus Joe stepped out, elegant even at midnight. Sarah. His voice was silk over steel. You're being dramatic. Come down, let's discuss this reasonably. Nothing reasonable about murder, she said. Accusations require evidence, which the FBI now has. Sheriff Walker stepped into the light, along with witness statements from half the county. Turns out farmers talk to each other. Marcus's perfect composure cracked slightly. You're bluffing. Am I? Sarah's voice carried across the farmyard. Check your phone, Marcus. It's all over the news. Every property deal, every suspicious accident. Amazing what people say when they're not afraid anymore. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Marcus's men looked to him uncertainly. "This isn't over," he said softly. "Yes," Sarah replied. "It is." State police vehicles poured in, lights flashing. FBI agents emerged from the Hendersons' trucks where they'd been waiting. Chen and his men surrendered quickly, but Marcus stood his ground. "You could have had everything," he told Sarah. "Power, security, a future. I have everything I need." She looked at Jack, then the gathered community. "And a future I chose." As the agents led Marcus away, he called back, "Someone else will." Come, there's always someone else." "Then we'll be ready," Jack said, holding the lantern high. Together, dawn broke over the farm, painting the sky pink and gold. The storm lantern's flame seemed pale now, but Jack kept it lit, a symbol of survival, of light outlasting darkness. Sarah leaned against him, watching FBI agents document evidence. "I never thought it would end like this." "Who says it's ending?" He turned to her. "Seems more like a beginning to me." Her answer was a kiss, passionate and unafraid, there in the morning light with their community around them. The storm lantern flickered between them, no longer needed, but still burning bright. Morning brought no peace to the farm. Despite Marcus's arrest, his organization remained active. Black SUVs circled the surrounding roads. Strange men watched from distant fields. The FBI maintained a presence, but they couldn't be everywhere. In his father's study, Jack opened a small wooden box he hadn't touched in years. Inside lay his grandfather's Bronze Star from World War II, awarded for protecting his unit during a siege in France. The old medal gleamed dully in the morning light. "Your grandfather was a soldier?" Sarah asked from the doorway. "Before he bought the farm, said the skills transferred, protecting what matters, standing your ground." Jack touched the medal gently. "Never thought I'd need those lessons." A phone rang downstairs, the secure line the FBI had installed. Sarah answered while Jack listened. "They've found 3 more properties," she reported. "Shell companies linking back to Marcus's organization. They're seizing assets, but his people are getting desperate." "Desperate how?" An explosion answered him, distant but clear. They ran outside to see smoke rising from the Hendersons' barn. "Bill?" Jack grabbed the radio they now kept for emergencies. "Bill, you there?" "We're okay," Henderson's voice crackled back. "Nobody hurt, but the hay storage." More reports came in throughout the morning. Equipment vandalized at the Chen farm. Threatening messages left for Tom Peterson. Marcus's empire was lashing out. The community responded with the stubborn resilience of people used to fighting nature itself. Farmers patrolled in groups, watching each other's properties. The sheriff's department ran constant sweeps. Even the local kids helped, using their bikes to carry messages between farms when radio silence was needed. Sarah coordinated from Jack's kitchen table, her laptop surrounded by papers. Years of her grandmother's careful records were finally serving their purpose, helping the FBI unravel Marcus's network. "They're targeting infrastructure," she said, marking a map. "Roads, power lines, water access, trying to isolate us." "Like they did with the restaurants?" Jack asked. "Similar pattern. Cut off supplies, create accidents, make it impossible to operate." She looked up grimly. "Then sweep in with help when people are desperate." A truck roared up the driveway. Mary Chen's son, Kevin, breathing hard. "They're coming," he gasped. "Big convoy, multiple directions." Jack grabbed his shotgun while Sarah called the FBI. Through binoculars, they could see vehicles approaching. Not just SUVs now, but heavy trucks. Marcus's people were done with subtle pressure. "Feds are 20 minutes out," Sarah reported. "Oh, we need to buy time." Jack touched his grandfather's medal, now in his pocket. "Get everyone inside." The next hour was chaos. Shots fired at power transformers, smoke bombs in fields. Marcus's men weren't trying to kill, just terrorize, isolate, break their resolve. But they hadn't counted on generations of farming knowledge. When they cut power, solar backups kicked in. When they blocked roads, farmers used hidden trails through fields. Every attack met prepared resistance. Jack found himself thinking of His grandfather, young and scared in France, protecting his people with nothing but courage and determination. The weight of the medal reminded him that ordinary people could find extraordinary strength when it mattered. Sarah worked the radio, coordinating defense teams. She'd shed all trace of the scared bride from the market, revealing the steel beneath. When a bullet shattered the kitchen window, she didn't even flinch. "FBI's 5 minutes out," she reported. "Highway Patrol 2, we just need to—" An engine roared, too close. A truck had breached the perimeter, was heading straight for the house. Jack raised his shotgun. "Jack!" Sarah's scream made him turn. A second truck coming from behind. He dove, pulling Sarah down as bullets peppered the wall. They scrambled behind the kitchen island as windows shattered. "You okay?" He touched her face, checking for injuries. "Fine. But they're going to—" An explosion rocked the house. Smoke poured in through broken windows. "They're burning us out," Sarah coughed. Jack pulled his grandfather's medal out, pressed it into her hand. "Here, for courage." "I don't need it." She gave it back, eyes fierce. "I have you." Before he could respond, sirens wailed in the distance, multiple vehicles coming fast, through the smoke. They saw Marcus's men retreating, melting away as law enforcement arrived in force. The FBI swept the property, but the attackers were gone. The house had damage, but stood firm. Like the people inside it, it had been built to last. That evening, neighbors arrived to help with repairs. Mary Chen brought food. Bill Henderson's crew helped board up windows. The community had been tested and emerged stronger. Jack found Sarah on the porch, watching the sunset paint the smoke-stained sky. His grandfather's medal glinted in his hand. "Your grandfather would be proud," she said softly. "Of what? Of how you protected what matters." She leaned against him, like he did. Jack wrapped an arm around her, feeling the strength in her slim frame. They'd survived the siege, but both knew the war wasn't over. Marcus's organization was wounded, not destroyed. But looking at his grandfather's medal, Jack felt only certainty. Some things were worth fighting for, some ground worth holding, some love worth any risk. Sarah's hands trembled as she pulled the small USB drive from a hidden compartment in her grandmother's old recipe box. It looked innocuous, just another piece of technology in a digital age. But its contents could destroy an empire. "After she died," Sarah explained, connecting it to her laptop. "I found this with her recipes, years of transactions, recordings, photographs. She documented everything." Jack watched folders open on the screen, financial records, surveillance photos, audio files, a meticulous chronicle of corruption and violence assembled by an old woman who knew she was living on borrowed time. "Your grandmother planned this," he said softly. Sarah nodded, tears in her eyes. She knew they'd kill her eventually. This was her insurance policy, her way of fighting back. The FBI agents leaned forward, studying the evidence. Agent Wilson, the lead investigator, let out a low whistle. "This is everything we needed. Money laundering, extortion, evidence of at least 3 murders. She looked at Sarah. "Your grandmother was very thorough." "She was Chinese," Sarah said with a sad smile. "She believed in keeping good records." The kitchen had become a command center. Maps covered the walls, showing Marcus's property holdings. Across 3 states, the USB drive was connecting dots the FBI had struggled with for years. His whole operation was built on property acquisition, Agent Wilson explained. Restaurants, farms, businesses, all strategic locations, creating infrastructure for something bigger. "Drug distribution," Sarah said quietly. "Human trafficking. Anything that needs a legitimate business front." Jack touched her shoulder gently. She reached up, squeezed his hand. "There's more," she continued. "Account numbers, offshore holdings, names of corrupted officials. Everything Marcus told me when he thought I was his obedient fiancé. You remembered all that? I learned from my grandmother. Always keep records." She pulled up another folder. "These are from after she died. My own insurance policy. The agents worked through the night, coordinating with teams across the country. Sarah answered questions, identified players, connected threads. Jack kept coffee flowing and watched her transform from victim to key witness. Dawn was breaking when Agent Wilson made the call. We're moving. Multiple locations, simultaneous raids. Mrs. Chen's evidence gives us probable cause. Sarah stared at her grandmother's recipe box. Will it be enough? Combined with your testimony? Yes, Marcus's organization is finished. As if in answer, their phones buzzed with news alerts. Photos showed Marcus's associates being led away in handcuffs. Banks frozen, properties seized. They're running, Agent Wilson reported, reading. Updates, his people are abandoning ship. Which makes them desperate, Jack said. More dangerous, Sarah closed her laptop. Marcus will have contingencies, ways to rebuild. Not this time. Agent Wilson stood. We're putting you both in protective custody until... No. Sarah's voice was firm. I won't run. Not anymore. Sarah, Jack started. My grandmother stayed, fought back the only way she could. She touched the USB drive. She gave me the weapons. Now I'll finish what she started. Agent Wilson frowned. It's not safe. Nowhere's safe until he's finished. Sarah looked at Jack. But here, I have something worth fighting for. Jack met her eyes, saw the strength there. The scared bride from the market was gone, replaced by a warrior carrying her grandmother's legacy. Then we fight smart, he said. Use the farm's advantages. Agent Wilson sighed. I'll leave a protective detail, but if anything... A commotion outside interrupted her. They rushed to the window. FBI vehicles were arriving, agents spilling out with urgent purpose. What's happening? Sarah asked. Agent Wilson checked her phone, face grim. Marcus escaped custody, and we just intercepted communications. He's coming here. Good, Sarah said softly. Jack looked at her sharply. This is where it started, she explained, with a frightened girl in a wedding dress. It should end here too. She plugged the USB drive into her laptop again, started copying files. What are you doing? Insurance. Marcus thinks this drive is the only copy. Her fingers flew over the keyboard. Let him come trying to destroy it. The evidence is already spreading across every law enforcement agency in the country. Jack watched her work, remembering the woman he'd found crying at the market. She'd had this strength all along, he realized. Just needed somewhere safe to find it. Your grandmother would be proud, he said. Sarah finished typing, stood straight. She taught me well. Always keep records, always plan ahead. She smiled grimly, and never let them see you coming. The first rays of dawn crept across the wheat fields, painting the world in shades of gold and shadow. Jack stood at his farmhouse window, watching the light reveal familiar landmarks transformed into tactical positions. FBI agents crouched behind. His tractor. Sheriff Walker's men used the grain silo for cover. The Hendersons and other farmers had formed a perimeter with their trucks. 3 vehicles approaching, Sarah reported, watching the security feeds. Taking back roads. Marcus knows the area now, Jack said. He'll try to split our attention. They'd prepared for this. The farm's irrigation system had been repurposed into a defensive network. Outbuildings held surprises. Every advantage of local knowledge would count. You should be in the safe house, he told Sarah. We've had this discussion. She checked. The USB drive hanging around her neck. I'm done running. The first shot shattered the pre-dawn quiet. Not aimed to kill, a warning announcing their arrival. Marcus's voice carried across the farm through a megaphone. Sarah, let's finish this reasonably. She moved to the window beside Jack. Like you finished things with my grandmother? The USB, Sarah, that's all I want. You can walk away, live your life. You mean hide and wait for your assassins? Engines roared as vehicles approached from multiple directions. Marcus's remaining loyalists, making their last stand. Don't be dramatic, Marcus called. I'm offering you a way out. Sarah's laugh was bitter. Like you offered my grandmother? Sign over the restaurant and retire comfortably. How long did she live after that deal? Silence. Then accidents happen. Not accidents anymore. Sarah's voice carried clear in the morning air. The evidence is already out. Every transaction, every murder, every corrupt deal. It's over, Marcus. Movement in the wheat field, armed men advancing through the crops. But Jack smiled grimly. They didn't know these fields like he did. Now, he said into his radio, the irrigation system sprayed to life, not with water but with liquid fertilizer. Men cursed, blinded and disoriented. Sheriff Walker's deputies moved in from covered positions. Marcus's voice turned hard. Burn it. Burn it all. Molotov cocktails arced through the dawn light. But they'd prepared for this too. Sprinklers activated, dousing flames before they could catch. The Hendersons' fire trucks stood ready. Your grandmother died afraid and alone, Marcus shouted. Remember that. No. Sarah's voice rang with certainty. She died fighting, and she left me everything. I needed to finish it. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions. Jack pulled Sarah down as bullets peppered the farmhouse, but the sturdy walls, reinforced after the last attack, held firm. Through the chaos, Jack spotted Marcus himself, moving toward the house with deadly purpose. But he didn't know the land, didn't see the subtle signs. 3 steps left, Jack whispered, counting Marcus's strides. The criminal boss stepped exactly where they'd planned. The ground, softened earlier by accidentally broken irrigation pipes, gave way. Marcus went down hard, his designer suit, coated in mud and manure. Sarah's voice carried across the battlefield. My grandmother believed in preparation, in patience, in letting your enemy's pride defeat them. FBI agents converged on the trapped man. His remaining forces, seeing their leader captured, began surrendering. Marcus looked up at the farmhouse, his perfect composure finally cracked. You think this changes anything? There will always be others. Maybe. Sarah stood in full view, Jack beside her. But they'll know what happened to you, how a farmer and a chef's granddaughter brought down your empire. The dawn light caught her face, showing not fear, but fierce triumph. Marcus saw it too, the final defeat of his power. Over her, law enforcement moved in, securing the scene. The farmers emerged from their positions, already discussing repairs to the damaged fields. Community strengths repurposed as weapons, now returning to their proper use. Jack found Sarah on the porch, watching Marcus being led away. Your grandmother would have loved this, he said softly. Using his own pride against him? Yes. She touched the USB drive. She taught me well. What happens now? Sarah looked at the farm, the gathering community, the dawn painting everything in new light. Now we rebuild, plant crops, make a life. She turned to him. If you'll have me? Jack pulled her close, kissed her as the sun rose fully over their land. Around them, FBI agents documented evidence, farmers planned repairs, and the world shifted into something new. Always, he whispered against her hair, always. 2 weeks after Marcus's arrest, the community gathered to rebuild the Hendersons' barn. The old structure had been too damaged by fire to save, but its replacement was rising from the ashes, stronger than before. Jack worked alongside Bill Henderson, setting support beams, while Sarah helped Mary Chen organize the potluck lunch. FBI says Marcus's trial date is set, Bill mentioned, hammering a nail. 3 months. Sarah's testimony will be crucial, Jack said, holding the beam steady. She's nervous but ready. The sound of hammers and saws filled the air, punctuated by children's laughter. The Henderson kids had turned cleanup into a game, collecting old nails for recycling. Tom Peterson's grandson was learning to use a level, his small face serious, with concentration. Marcus's empire's falling apart, Bill continued, properties being returned to original owners where possible. You're Sarah's grandmother's restaurant. Going to her cousin in Seattle. She's keeping the family recipes alive. Sarah appeared with water bottles, her eyes bright with purpose. She'd been different since the final confrontation, lighter, as if setting down a heavy burden. The foundation's looking good, she said, studying the new barn's bones, stronger than the original. That's the point, Bill replied. We build better after trouble. Always have. The words carried weight beyond the barn. All around them, the community was healing, growing stronger. The Chen farm had new security cameras, paid for by a community fund. Tom Peterson's fields were being worked by neighboring farmers while he recovered from his injuries. Even the sheriff's department had changed, with new policies for investigating property sales under pressure. Marcus's lawyers tried offering a deal, Sarah mentioned. Watching the work. Reduced charges in exchange for my silence. Jack paused in his hammering. And I told them my grandmother's story deserves to be heard. All of it. She touched the USB drive she still wore. The evidence is safe. Copies everywhere. But the testimony, that's personal. Above them, the barn's new roof beams reached toward the sky. Local teenagers were already planning where the new dance floor would go, talking about future gatherings. Got something to show you, Bill said suddenly. He led them to the barn's front wall, where a simple plaque was being mounted. It read, "Standing Together, dedicated to those who fought to keep our community free." Sarah's eyes welled up. Jack squeezed her hand. "We protect our own," Bill said simply. "Always will." The potluck lunch was a celebration of survival and renewal. Mary Chen's dumplings sat beside Henderson family cornbread. Sarah had made her grandmother's secret recipe soup, sharing the tradition with her new community. "Had a call from Seattle," she told Jack as they ate. "My cousin's reopening. The restaurant next month. Wants us to come for the grand opening." "Us?" she smiled. "Unless you're too busy farming. I think the wheat can spare me for a weekend." Around them, children played while adults discussed crop rotations and shared security tips. The new normal included both vigilance and joy. The community changed, but unbroken. The FBI had left a small protective detail, but their presence felt more like friendship now. Agent Wilson had even brought her famous potato salad to the potluck. Marcus's sentencing recommendations came in, she told them quietly. "With the evidence from your grandmother's records and your testimony, he's looking at life." Sarah nodded, watching the barn rise. "Good. But that's not why we won." "Oh?" "We won because we stood together, because a community is stronger than any empire." The afternoon sun gilded the new barn's frame. Tomorrow would bring more work, rebuilding, planting, growing. But the foundations were solid, built on trust and shared purpose. Later, as sunset painted the sky, Jack found Sarah sitting on their porch steps. She was writing in a notebook, documenting everything, just as her grandmother had taught her. "For the future," she explained, "so people remember how we fought back." Jack sat beside her, watched her precise handwriting fill the pages. The story of a bride who found safety, of a farmer who stood his ground, of a community that refused to break. "Your grandmother would be proud," he said. Sarah looked at the rebuilt barn in the distance, its new walls solid against the evening sky. "She taught me that sometimes you fight with weapons, sometimes with words, sometimes with kindness, but you always fight for what matters." Jack pulled her close. Together they watched their community head home, carrying tools and empty potluck, dishes, already planning the barn's first dance. The future stretched before them, as rich with promise as freshly planted fields. The small velvet box had belonged to Jack's mother, last used to hold her own engagement ring. Now it sat in his pocket, a constant presence as he watched Sarah tend to their fall garden. She'd expanded it significantly, adding herbs and vegetables her grandmother had favored, blending their traditions as naturally as she'd blended into his life. "The restaurant opening is next week," she called, not looking up from her work. "Ellen says they're using all of grandmother's original recipes." "Looking forward to it," Jack replied, touching the box in his pocket. He'd been carrying it for days, waiting for the right moment. The farm had flourished in the months since Marcus's arrest. The wheat fields stretched golden under the autumn sun, ready for harvest. Sarah had started a small farmer's market stand, selling traditional Chinese vegetables alongside American produce. Their customers came as much for her cooking advice as for the food itself. Marcus's trial was proceeding smoothly, his empire dismantled piece by piece. Sarah's testimony had been powerful, helping to free other families from similar schemes across the country. But here on the farm, life moved at its own pace, governed by seasons rather than court dates. "I was thinking," Sarah said, brushing dirt from her hands, "we could plant fruit trees next spring. Asian pears, maybe some plums. Create a proper orchard." "Planning to stay that long?" Jack asked carefully. She turned to him, a slight smile playing at her lips. "Unless you're planning to evict me." "Actually," he pulled out the box, dropped to one knee in the soft earth. "I was thinking about making it permanent." Sarah's eyes widened as he opened the box, revealing his mother's ring, simple, elegant, its small diamond catching the sunlight. "Jack, I'm not Marcus," he said quietly. "Can't give you mansions or expensive things, just this farm, this life. But I promise to love you, protect you, stand beside you through whatever comes." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Those are the only things I ever wanted. Is that a yes?" She pulled him up, kissed him deeply. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." The ring fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. They stood in their garden, holding each other, until the sound of approaching vehicles made them look up. The Hendersons' truck led a small parade of cars down their driveway. Mary Chen emerged with covered dishes. Tom Peterson carried bottles of champagne. "How did you—" Sarah started. Jack grinned. "Farmers talk to each other, remember?" The impromptu celebration spread across their porch and yard. Someone brought out a radio, started playing music. Mary Chen insisted on examining the ring, pronouncing it perfect. "When's the wedding?" Bill Henderson asked, passing out champagne. Sarah looked at Jack. "Spring," she suggested. "After the planting?" He nodded. "Perfect timing. The fruit trees can be our wedding present to ourselves." As afternoon turned to evening, their friends lingered. Children played in the yard, while adults shared food and stories. Sarah moved among them with natural grace, her ring catching the light as she gestured, already planning the wedding feast. "You know," Mary Chen said to Jack, "when you first brought her home in that wedding dress, we all wondered what would happen. And now we know you both found exactly what you needed." Later, after everyone had gone home, Jack and Sarah sat on their porch steps. The ring glinted on her hand as she wrote in her notebook, documenting another chapter in their story. "What are you writing?" he asked. "About how love grows like crops," she said, "with patience, care, and the right foundation." She looked up at their land, their home. "About how sometimes you have to run away from the wrong life to find the right one." Jack wrapped an arm around her. Above them, stars emerged in the darkening sky. In the distance, a security patrol passed quietly, the community still watchful, but no longer afraid. "Think your grandmother would approve?" he asked. Sarah touched the ring, smiled. She always said true love was like good food. Simple ingredients, prepared with care, shared with joy. She leaned against him. "So yes, I think she'd approve very much." The autumn wind carried the scent of ripening wheat and Sarah's herbs, the mingled fragrance of their shared life. Tomorrow would bring work and challenges, but tonight was for dreams, of spring weddings and fruit trees, of traditions honored and new ones begun. The new sign at the farm's entrance read, "Miller Family Farm," with Mila Jiating Nongchang, written beneath in elegant Chinese characters. Sarah had insisted on both, bridging their cultures just as she'd been bridging their lives. Jack watched her, trace the letters with gentle fingers, her engagement ring catching the spring sunshine. "It's perfect," she said, "both names together, just like us," Jack replied, wrapping his arms around her from behind. The wedding was a week away. The farm hummed with preparation, not just for the ceremony, but for the future they were building. New saplings marked the beginnings of their orchard, their roots already taking hold in the Montana soil. That morning's mail had brought 2 significant letters. The first, Marcus's sentencing was complete. life without parole, his empire dismantled, his victims receiving restitution. The second, final approval for Sarah's cousin to reopen the grandmother's restaurant, its legacy preserved. "Feel like a weight's been lifted," Sarah said, still looking at the sign. "Like we can finally just live." The sound of trucks approaching drew their attention. The Hendersons and Chens arrived with wedding decorations, followed by Tom Peterson's truck loaded with tables and chairs. The whole community had insisted on helping, turning wedding preparations into a celebration of renewal. "Sarah!" "Mary," Chen called, waving fabric samples. "We need your opinion on the table settings." Jack squeezed her hand. "Go, I'll finish up here." She kissed him quickly before joining the others. Jack watched her go, remembering the frightened bride he'd found at the market. Now she moved with confidence, her laughter carrying across the yard as she directed preparations. The afternoon passed in a blur of activity. Women arranged flowers, while men set up the tent where the ceremony would be held. Children ran errands, proud to be helping. Even the FBI agents who'd become friends stopped by with wedding gifts. "Got something to show you," Jack said when Sarah finally took a break. He led her to the barn, where a surprise waited. Inside, he'd recreated a corner of her grandmother's restaurant, down to the small table with fresh flowers she'd described so often. A framed photo of her grandmother sat beside one of Jack's parents. "So they can be here," he explained. "Part of our celebration." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Jack, your cousin helped with the details, and Mary Chen found the exact flowers your grandmother used." She stopped him with a kiss, fierce and full of love. When they finally parted, she touched the photographs, gently. "They would have loved each other," she said, "your parents and my grandmother. They all believed in building something lasting." Outside, the wedding preparations continued. The tent took shape against the backdrop of wheat fields and young fruit trees. Sarah's herb garden provided fresh flowers and fragrance, while the farm's bounty would feed their guests. Agent Wilson arrived with final paperwork. The last of Marcus's cases closed, his threats ended for good. She'd become a friend during the long legal process, would be a guest at the wedding. "Thought you'd want to know," she told Sarah. "The restaurant properties he took, all being returned to their original owners. Your grandmother's records made it possible." Sarah nodded, holding Jack's hand. "She always said justice comes to those who keep faith. I didn't understand then, and now I understand that faith isn't just believing, it's planting seeds even in hard times, building something stronger than fear." The sun began to set, painting their land in golden light. Most of the preparations were complete. Tomorrow would bring more work, but tonight— "Dance with me?" Jack asked suddenly. "Here? Now? Why not?" He pulled her close as their friends and neighbors worked nearby. No music played, but they didn't need any, swaying together in the evening light. "Having second thoughts," he teased, "about marrying a simple farmer?" "Never." She rested her head on his shoulder. "This is exactly where I meant to be." The new farm sign caught the last rays of sun, both languages glowing with promise. Their friends called good nights as they headed home, leaving final preparations for tomorrow. Jack and Sarah stood together, watching darkness settle over their land. The young fruit trees cast long shadows, their spring buds holding the promise of future harvests. Like their love, like their community, like the legacy they were building, growing stronger with each passing season. Sarah stood before the mirror in what had once been her temporary refuge, and was now simply her room. The new wedding dress caught the morning light. Simple, elegant silk that honored both her Chinese heritage and her American home. No trace remained of that first desperate bride who'd fled to the market in borrowed finery. Mary Chen adjusted the dress's sash, while Sarah's cousin Ellen wove flowers into her hair. Through the window, she could see the farm transformed. White chairs dotted the wheat field. Paper lanterns swayed in the spring breeze, ready for evening. Their community had worked magic, blending traditions as seamlessly as the characters on their new farm sign. Your grandmother would be proud, Ellen said softly, placing the final flower. You look exactly as she dreamed. She is proud, Sarah replied, touching the delicate chain around her neck, no longer holding a USB drive of secrets, but her grandmother's jade pendant. She's here with us. Downstairs, guests were arriving. The entire town had turned out, along with Sarah's extended family from Seattle. Even Agent Wilson had come, now just another friend, celebrating their joy. Jack waited beneath an arch of twisted wheat stalks and cherry blossoms. Bill Henderson stood beside him as best man, both men looking surprisingly comfortable in their suits. The wheat fields stretched behind them, green with spring promise. Sarah's cousin Eric walked her down the aisle, but the whole community rose to escort her. These people who had sheltered her, fought beside her, helped her build a new life, they were all her family now. The ceremony blended their worlds, traditional American vows mixed with Chinese blessings. The ring Jack placed on her finger nestled perfectly beside his mother's engagement ring. When they kissed, the cheers came in multiple languages, all meaning the same thing: love, acceptance, joy. The reception sprawled across their farm as day faded to evening. Tables groaned with food that told their story. Mary Chen's dumplings beside Henderson family barbecue, Sarah's grandmother's recipes beside traditional Montana fare. Children played between the young fruit trees, while adults danced under strings of lights. "Remember our first dance?" Jack asked as they swayed together. "At the Hendersons' barn? I was so scared then," Sarah admitted, watching for black SUVs, waiting for everything to fall apart. And now, she looked around at their gathered loved ones, their flourishing farm, their future taking root like their newly planted orchard. "Now I'm home." As night deepened, they kept their Chinese guests' tradition of staying to watch the sun rise. Stories flowed as freely as wine. Sarah's Seattle family shared tales of her grandmother's early days in America, while their Montana friends recounted the community's stand against corruption. Not as war stories now, but as legends of hope. Near midnight, Sheriff Walker raised a toast. "To the Millers," he said, "who taught us that love isn't just about standing together in good times. It's about fighting together through the hard ones." "To the Millers," the response echoed across their land. Dawn found them still celebrating. Sarah and Jack slipped away to watch the sunrise from their porch steps. The farm was coming alive, birds calling, morning dew silvering the wheat, their young fruit trees casting long shadows. "Any regrets?" Jack asked, holding her close. "About choosing this life." Sarah thought of that day at the market, how close she'd come to running further, missing this chance at happiness. "My grandmother used to say that good fortune is like farming," she replied. "You have to know where to plant, when to water, how to tend what grows. But mostly," she squeezed his hand, "you have to trust your heart about what's worth cultivating." The sun crested the horizon, painting their world in gold. Their wedding guests were beginning to stir, ready to help with morning chores before departing. The rhythm of farm life waited for no one, not even newlyweds. But now that rhythm included Sarah's herbs growing beside Jack's wheat, Chinese vegetables flourishing in Montana soil. Their farm stand would sell dumplings alongside sweet corn. Their future children would know 2 languages and 1,000 stories of courage. "Ready to start the day, Mrs. Miller?" Jack asked. Sarah smiled, remembering a frightened bride in a borrowed dress, a kind farmer offering shelter, a community rising to defend its own. Remembering her grandmother's wisdom about planting seeds of hope even in dark times. "Ready for everything," she said, and led her husband toward their future, blooming bright as morning.